each collection as a whole rather than in parts. Finally, treating each volume as a top container allows them to link books to shelf locations to help streamline pulling books from the stack.
Thank you, Jessica, and thanks for being here, everyone. It's great to be with you. My name is Somerville McSparran, and I'm the curator of manuscripts at Vanderbilt University. And my talk for today is called Seeing the Forest, Not Just the Trees, Book Collections in ArchivesSpace. We all know that collections of personal materials often contain more than just paper documents. They can also include things like audiovisual items, born digital materials, artifacts. We have some shoes in our collection, framed items, and most importantly for this presentation, books. In library school and in the places I've worked, there's an enormous divide between unpublished and published materials, archives and manuscripts, and rare books. When books and papers arrive at the Vanderbilt Special Collections, the practice has been to separate the two from one another, handing the papers to an archivist to process, and sending the books off to cataloging. The papers are arranged and described contextually in ArchivesSpace, and the books are described individually in ALMA, hopefully at least with a note stating the donor's name. So here's one example. Grantland Rice was a sports writer in the mid-20th century, and he donated his papers and books to Vanderbilt long ago. You can see the finding aid for his papers on the left and the book collection in ALMA on the right. Right now, these two collections don't have any notes showing the connection between them, which I think is a missed opportunity. In an archive where there are often enormous amounts of material coming in to be accessioned and then processed, not to mention the pre-existing backlog, I completely understand the appeal of being able to hand off a big chunk of incoming items to someone else to deal with. However, as an archivist, I also understand the value of original order. The original order of items reveals information about the creator, how the items were used, and the relationship between the items themselves. For this presentation, I'm focusing specifically on the books that get handed off to cataloging. My concern with this handoff is that a researcher who comes to look at the rare books in our collection often has no concept of the context that these books arrived with. Now, I know that ArchivesSpace has the word archives in the title, not books, but because of the contextual abilities that ArchivesSpace has, it is uniquely situated to describe collections of material regardless of format. So at Vanderbilt, we've started to think about linking the book catalog records within resource records in ArchivesSpace so that the collection can be viewed more clearly as one collection assembled by one creator. So I'm going to walk you through this process, putting books in ArchivesSpace with one of our collections, the Nettie Hale Rand collection of fine binding and printing. And we do have a small manuscript collection from Nettie Hale Rand, but the book collection is much larger. And it has really beautiful books with different lovely bindings and early printings. So I'll be looking at 5 different topics in this case study: linking ArchivesSpace and ALMA, contextual notes, arrangement, documenting uniqueness, and top containers and locations. So our goal here is to keep it simple and not redo work that catalogers are doing. ALMA is still the system of record for the books in our collections, and we don't intend to change that. We just want everything to be visible in ArchivesSpace to help enable research. So for the Rand collection test case, I first had one of my colleagues in cataloging export the ALMA records for the collection. Then I played around with the data that was there, transforming the spreadsheet and moving the necessary data into the ArchivesSpace archival object bulk import template. I used the ArchivesSpace title field to house the book's author and title information, as well as a hypertext reference to the book's ALMA permalink, which shows up on the ArchivesSpace public side as a bracketed phrase saying link to catalog to point users in that direction. I considered adding the ALMA links as digital objects and adding the book's author as an agent link instead of putting all of this in the title field, but for now I'm just trying to keep it simple, so that's why I did this. And then I put the book's publication date in the ArchivesSpace date field with the publication label. I also used call numbers as container indicators and used the assigned barcodes from the catalogers as the container barcodes. And I'll talk more about that later. So here's one example of the Odyssey. public side view up on top and then kind of the back end below. So once I was done with the archival object book spreadsheet, I uploaded it to the ArchivesSpace collection. And this is what it looks like. Next, I'll talk about contextual notes. Alma may be able to group books into collections, but it cannot provide context or description for those collections. And if any of you have used Alma, when you're trying to look at something that's part of a collection, the collection view is just really not user-friendly. You can't rearrange things, so it's hard to tell what you're looking at. You have to keep pushing load more to see the entire thing. ArchivesSpace, however, as we all know, has plenty of possibilities for added notes. So the ones in this example include a scope and content note, biographical notes, an abstract, and source of acquisition. So you can see the Nettie Hale Rand ArchivesSpace page there on the right. Okay, so if the book collection was donated by the institution rather than by an individual, I would like to document the collecting policy in a historical note. So I just think these notes have all kinds of possibilities for book collections. As you can imagine, they'll be incredibly helpful for orienting researchers. Okay, when possible, we can use ArchivesSpace to add a note about the way in which the collector arranged the collection. We can also visually arrange the collection as the collector did in the collection organization. So the books can stay in call number order on the shelf, but we can use ArchivesSpace to recreate the intellectual arrangement of the books. So this photo is of the author Junot Diaz standing in front of two of his bookshelves. And you can see that he had a very idiosyncratic way of arranging them. The shelves are all double stacked and have books going in various directions. And I think it would be helpful to be able to describe that for a researcher because it tells you something about the collector's mind and process. If the original order of the books was lost, we can still use the hierarchical function to intellectually arrange the books into series. For example, with the Rand collection, that original order has been lost, but I could use the rearranging function to put that collection into categories by specific binders and printers, which could help any researcher who's studying one particular binder to see everything in a collection with that person's name. Ideally, catalogers edit copy catalog records to highlight differences, but added notes are difficult to spot or synthesize in the book catalog. ArchivesSpace allows us to add notes about unique qualities, such as marginalia and ephemera. In effect, marginal notes turn books into manuscripts, and in the case of ephemera, ArchivesSpace can help track where folders of ephemera live, and link that to the book record. I don't know about your institutions, but at Vanderbilt, when a book collection comes in and the catalogers go through it, they take out all the ephemera, stick it in a folder, and just put it in a filing cabinet, and there's no record of it anywhere. So I would love to make that more visible to researchers. And then finally, treating each book in a collection as a top container in ArchivesSpace allows us to link books to shelf locations to help streamline pulling books from the stacks. At Vanderbilt, our rare books are shelved by call number within collection, but a move several years ago from the previous cataloging system into Alma meant that a lot of the collection data was lost. That means that sometimes a book is requested, and the only information available to the person pulling it is a call number. We have about 50 rare book collections, so it can take time to figure out which collection the book is from, and we might have to check multiple places within the building to finally, hopefully, find it. Furthermore, we've had several moves over the years, and some of our collections are not in correct call number order. We're currently barcoding all of our shelf locations and adding that data to ArchivesSpace. And I'm sorry I missed the talk this morning. I'm excited to talk more about adding locations in ArchivesSpace. So by importing cataloger-assigned book barcodes and call numbers into ArchivesSpace as container instance data, we can scan individual volumes to pull up those records in ArchivesSpace after we've added them there, and then bulk edit the location to assign them to a particular shelf. This will make things much easier to find and will mean that we can stop relying on institutional knowledge or luck, which is often how we find our books. You can see in this image how each book in the collection has been assigned a location. And it tells you exactly what row and column and shelf things are on. My eventual goal is to get our Alma and ArchivesSpace instances to talk back and forth to each other so that everything is linked and so that requests made through the catalog pull the ArchivesSpace location data with them, again, to make it easier to pull things. This project is still a work in progress, but we are hopeful that putting our book collections in ArchivesSpace will help contextualize our materials, provide greater access and more research potential, and make retrieval easier on the staff end. Books are really wonderful by themselves, but I think they're even more interesting when taken together. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mary. My background is in rare books and manuscripts, and I was like, that's a great idea. Yeah, okay, Mary has a question for Mary, okay.
Hi Mary, it's Mary.
Hey.
There's 3 Marys here at least, that's
Yeah.
great. My question for you is, how does Alma currently, if at all, point to ArchivesSpace? You're doing a lot of ArchivesSpace to Alma, what's the other way around look like for you right now?
Yeah, so we, at some point, they pulled the data from ArchivesSpace so that the collection level records show up in Alma, but they don't consistently update that. And so that's been something I've been meaning to talk to our IT people about because none of our new collections show up in Alma. So anyways, yeah, I need to have more conversations about linking the two, making everything more visible. But again, as someone mentioned earlier, I don't want to have duplicate records, so I need to talk about shadowing certain things. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, we'll do Caitlin and then we'll.
Thanks so much, Mary. I have a book background, so my question is, I think, a little differently oriented. It sounds like from the ability to get an export from Alma from a given sort of donor, that Alma is concatenating these books in some way, whether with like a 700 added corporate author or something. And I'd like to hear about some of the decisions that were made that kept you from just adding a note in the front matter, pointing to that Alma sort of collective group.
Yeah, that's a good question. And at Vanderbilt, it's been handled very differently over the years. So sometimes there's a note that says donated by such and such person. Sometimes there's not a note. It's just every collection is different. So yeah, and initially, and I've seen other institutions use just link to the Alma or a book catalog collection data in ArchivesSpace, so just say okay, here's a collection donated by this person, they donated all this stuff, and they donated these books. Check out the catalog to see these books. And so I was digging more deeply into those, and what I didn't like about it is that I still had to do some work to find all the books. Like it just wasn't a natural or easy process to find or see each item all together. So that was kind of my thinking. But yeah, thanks for that question.